editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for this 3 o'clock show here this afternoon. It's a bright and sunny day in downtown Providence. I'd like to welcome my next guest in, Eva Agudelo. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Hope's Harvest, Rhode Island, which we'll get into shortly, part of a big group that there's going to be a special screening of a film tomorrow night at the cable car. This is The Gleaners and I. This is folks who glean food products, whether that's here in the city, in the forest. Tell us about The Gleaners and I and about this discussion that's going to take place about how folks really look at consumption and gleaning, if you will.
Sure. So The Gleaners and I is a film that was made by Agnes Varda. It's a French film, and it's about people who go out into farmers' fields and rescue surplus food. So when there's, after the harvest, the farmers used to leave, and this is a very ancient practice, used to leave food in the field for those who were poor or hungry to come and get that leftover food. And that's something that's still happening all over the world in that way, and then is happening in a little bit more structured ways now in our sort of modern world. And this is a film about that.
And have you seen the film?
I have seen the film, yeah.
I saw BBC, one of the top 100 films of the 21st century. I mean, that impactful.
It's absolutely, it's a beautiful movie. It's really well done. It's really interesting. I think it goes sort of beyond some of those more documentary style movies that you're used to seeing. And it really shows profiles of just fascinating people engaging in this gathering process.
And so let's talk a little bit about the gleaning process, if you will. You mentioned it being an ages-old practice, and I think there's something probably very just unifying about this film. It's food and consumption and how to help everybody on the planet. Let's talk a little bit about Hope's Harvest, Rhode Island, and how that plays into looking at consumption here. So let's talk a little bit about the organization that you helped found.
Sure. So I've been working on this project for about a year, and the goal is to mobilize volunteers to rescue that surplus food out of local farmers' fields and distribute it out to hunger relief agencies across the state. So my background is working with the Rhode Island Food Bank. I've also worked with farmers in my life. And there's a lot of food going to waste in Rhode Island's farms, and we want to make sure that that's nutritious, delicious, yummy, healthy food that's going to the people who need it the most.
And I'm assuming this is something that goes on throughout the country. You must have a network of folks, because it probably seems like it would be a logistical operation, if you will.
It sure is. There's a lot of different moving parts. I mean, it comes off as pretty straightforward, right? You go, you get the food.
Seems straightforward.
Sure, but there's all kinds of things to manage. There's getting the trucks and the cold storage and making sure the volunteers are trained and ready to go out into the field and have the right equipment, and getting the food from the right farm to the right pantry, making sure you have volunteers in the area that you need them to be. So it's all definitely got a lot going on, which is what keeps it interesting and fun.
So how big is this volunteer operation? I'm assuming you always need more volunteers.
Absolutely. You can sign up to volunteer at hopesharvest.org, and we're always trying to recruit more volunteers to participate. My goal was to recruit 200 volunteers this first year and have at least 100 of them get out actually onto the farm. So I think lots of people are really excited about it, and it seems like, it's a fun 2 hours. You get to go be a farmer for a little while and get some sunshine and do something really tangible and helpful for your friends and neighbors.
Can you incorporate this as a family activity? Maybe do you have to be an adult over the age of 14, 16, 18?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we'll have different trips that will be geared towards different groups. Some of it is a liability question. We might be able to have parents sign waivers for their kids and stuff like that, but we want to make sure that the farmers are safe and that everybody's totally covered when they're going out. So I think that can get a little trickier with young kids, but we'd love to have, You Pick is a really great fun thing to do with family, so it's similar to that for sure.
So you're going to be one of the panelists after the screening tomorrow night. Who else is taking part in this conversation?
Sue Anderbois, who's the Director of Food Strategy for the state of Rhode Island, will be there. Antonia Bryson, who spearheaded a campaign called Food Too Good to Waste, which was sort of consumer focused on food waste at the household level. And then Bridget Sweet from Johnson & Wales University, who's the Director of Food Safety there and is doing a lot of thinking about institutional food waste and how to rescue some of that food from colleges and universities.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, kind of multi-prong approach, because you're in the fields, but as you said, homes, colleges, universities. What about stores? You see these mass supermarkets. How it might not be your jurisdiction per se, but you know that it's there. How is that approached?
So I think that, I used to work at the food bank, and they get a lot of great product from our local supermarkets. So I know that people are trying to work on that, and they have their own set of challenges for sure. But there is definitely waste. One of the things that's a bit of a challenge is that grocery stores have gotten more and more efficient over the years. So they don't always have as much to let go of, which is good for them as a business and not great for the people who could use that food.
So the screening tomorrow night will provide all the information. Is it sold out yet?
It is not sold out yet. You can still get tickets. You can go to our Facebook page for the Eventbrite link, which is Hope's Harvest on Facebook, and you can also go to the Cable Cars website, which is cablecarcinema.com, and they have the link as well to purchase tickets. So definitely go get some.
Yes, and that's the waning weeks of the cable car, and it's again one of what BBC called one of the top 100 films of the 21st century. I'm sure you've been gearing up for this tomorrow night, but as you said, you're always there rolling up your sleeves looking for people to help you out. I mean, what does the summertime have in store? Is it just that week in, week out, just synchronizing and getting folks where they need to be?
Yeah, we're hoping to start really doing lots of gleaning trips in July, and that's when farmers start to have product in the field that they just, there's so much abundance. So things like, squashes and tomatoes and peppers and all that stuff that you think of as fresh and beautiful out in the field will start to come in pretty heavy, and we'll be able to get out as much as we can.
How much, when you bring these to places, pantries in the food bank, of their supply, how much do you think this contributes?
I think it contributes a lot because when you think about what you're actually getting for fruits and vegetables, the bang for your buck is much higher, right? Fruits and vegetables are super, super necessary for a healthy diet and for avoiding some of those health and diet-related diseases. And so I think for people who are low income, maybe they have more access to canned goods or dry goods, but when you get some really fresh local fruits and veggies, it just is so much better. And the quality of that produce, because it just came off the farm, it lasts a lot longer. So if you're low income, that really makes a big difference because you don't want something in your fridge that's just going to go bad within a day or two.
And so talk a little bit about the movie, The Gleaners and I. Where did they take a look at Gleaners? Is it worldwide? Where are they focused in this?
It's mostly in France. And it's it was about 20 years ago that the movie was made. Apparently there's been a follow-up since then. But it's farms and also people who are gleaning from the markets. So, in France they have farmers markets everywhere kind of all of the time, and there'll be people going and sort of picking up what's left over after the market, so that's a big part of it. But it's also a little bit broader than that and goes into people who glean things for making art. So people who are making art out of trash and
that's what I'd seen in the preview.
Yeah.
The bigger gleaning sort of community, if you will.
Yeah, and then if you want to get really woo-woo about it, and metaphorically speaking, the filmmaker herself is also a gleaner, and she's sort of pulling these images and stories from people that she's encountering. So I just found it really moving. It was a really pretty film. Yeah.
Do you think it really opens people's eyes too about consumption and maybe conspicuous consumption, if you will, and sort of just needing what's needed and having a sense of what overabundance and what waste might mean?
Yeah, and I think the fact that the practice of gleaning goes back so far, that there's a history of generosity among people who knew that there were people who were in need and wanted to make sure that that product wasn't going to waste. And farmers are really deeply committed to feeding people, and so it makes a lot of sense that they would want to make sure that nothing's going to waste. Also, they worked really hard to grow that food in the first place.
Somebody please take these tomatoes.
Totally, and they're beautiful. It's beautiful food, and of course they want to see it getting used. So, yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a great filming, a great screening discussion after. And of course, if you want to find out more information, we'll have links to Hope's Harvest, Rhode Island, as well as the film screening tomorrow night. Eva, I appreciate your taking the time to come into the studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back with our next guest here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center.